This video is about how to prepare for your healing vacation. And honestly, it can be used for any people starting care with me. These are all things that we're going to go over within the treatment. But if you can get on top of these in advance, it will really expedite your care. So, the types of patients I see are people who have chronic conditions and people who have been to see a lot of other healthcare providers. So that type of patient profile really means that this is a person with a complex case, right? It's not a case that responds to typical intervention. If it is a case that is straightforward and responds to typical intervention, it would have already been solved. You wouldn't have it to come see me. But because all the things that you did not provide you with lasting benefit, that means that there are additional systems involved or undiagnosed conditions that are involved. And so those are things that we're going to work on so that you can have complete healing. So that even though when you come for your healing vacation, you're going to get 20 hours of manual therapy, it's these other things that can really kind of like make or break you. Because they can slow down the treatment to such an extent that it makes it difficult to complete the full 20 hours of treatment. And so I'm going to go through and talk about all of the potential hazards or things that can kind of like complicate care, and then give you tips about how to begin caring for that in advance. So one of the things that makes it difficult for people to respond to their care without having a setback, which is to say a healing crisis or inflammation. So those would be the two things, right? So a healing crisis is what happens when we speed up healing too quickly and the body cannot accept that. It can't deal with it. And so this could be the detox systems cannot sustain the debris that's created from manual therapy, and they're backed up. And so then the healing crisis is that you get sick because your detox pathways are too clogged up and you can't tolerate the manual therapy. So that's one thing. Another thing is inflammation. So you may have an underlying condition that is highly inflammatory in nature. For instance, the most common one is going to be blood sugar dysregulation. If you have blood sugar dysregulation, then you're going to come in with a lot of inflammation, and that inflammation itself is going to make it difficult to make progress because it has to be addressed first before getting into the tissue. And you'll have very painful treatments with inflammation, and the body tries to counteract inflammation by fluid retention, so that there is less tissue damage. And so then it's going to be hard getting on top of the tissue drainage while the inflammation is there, because it's actually serving a purpose. And so those are a couple of the things that can kind of make the response to treatment complicated. We're going to go over those things. The other things that don't make the treatment complicated, but are important to address to have a full response to the treatment are things like breathing and posture, and also movement mechanics. So we'll go over those specifically, so that you can get started on those in advance. And then the other thing that can slow down treatment is the adhesions themselves that you're bringing in. And so I'm going to give you tips on how to address the adhesions themselves. All right, so that's kind of like a little bit of an overview. So the number one thing that you can do to prepare for your healing vacation or for your treatment series is to support the kidney and the lymphatic detox system. And this is important because we're going to be probably on most people, we focus on the fluid system because that's what's overlooked in most all other therapeutic intervention. And so usually the people I see are going to have a big component of lymphatic and venous or vascular compromise and congestion. And so we're going to need to bring on support for that. Um, and so there's a supplement that's called Kidney Care by Quicksilver Scientific that you can get at full script through my website at a 10% discount. And that's a good thing to bring on board. Just get on one of those bottles. Should take about a week to do it. And that's just a bunch of herbs that are going to support the lymphatic system and the kidney system, get that system up and pumping so that it can receive all of the fluid that's going to be brought into it by the manual therapy. So if you do one thing, do that. The second thing that, we were kind of talking about before is the inflammation. And so we were talking about how that really slows down healing because it creates this kind of like puffiness in people. It's very painful. And so the tips for decreasing inflammation are basically reducing refined carbohydrates and sugar. So basically, you're trying to bring that blood sugar into a normal range, decreasing other inflammatory agents like tobacco, alcohol, pot, vaping, other kinds of drugs. Can be other kind of like environmental pollutants. It could be molds, it could be pesticides, it could be um, inhaled pollutants. So just see what's in your environment and try to just kind of like clean it up. Sometimes it's not enough to try to clean up those things yourself, and it's helpful to bring in a natural anti-inflammatory, like something that I recommend is called D-Flam, D as in dog, flam as in inflammation, and that's by Protocol for Life Balance. You can also get that through full script through my website for a 10% discount. And that's really nice because it's working the COX-1 and COX-2 anti-inflammatory pathways. And so it's a really complete type of natural anti-inflammatory. It has a lot of really nice herbs in it that most people can tolerate really well. And so the lifestyle, the dietary factors, and then maybe if you want to add in something, you can add in that D-Flam. To get a head start on the adhesions, I always recommend castor oil packs. So I will always recommend that people do them once they are here, but it's actually like super awesome if people can get onto that in advance. Castor oil packs are a fantastic way of working with deep adhesions. They kind of melt the adhesions, and they also are detoxing. And so they offer multiple benefits. They kind of like take a load off of the kidneys, the lymphatics, and the liver, and allow for some detoxification through the skin. Of course, you have to be careful if you detox too fast, if you use them too often. It can also cause a healing crisis. If you do it over the abdominal area, you can get diarrhea because it also will impact the intestines and speed up motility. Um, so you have to be kind of careful with these. And I have a link here to the instructions on how to do them. The way that I recommend that people do them is a castor oil pack over the upper back, where the upper back meets the neck, kind of in the shoulder area, because the whole body drains there. Also the upper chest, the clavicle area, because the whole body drains there. um, and then also at the bra line, this is also this is a watershed for the lymphatics. And then in the front part, from the breast down to the lower rib cage, or the belly button, this is part of that watershed. And then you're getting that whole transverse plane with the respiratory diaphragm there, the upper GI and liver and kidneys. So this is an awesome one to do. And then the belly button down to the pubic bone, that'll get to you to the all of the lower GI, the bladder, the uterus, the rectum, and then on the back, the same place, from like the sacrum up into the lower thoracics, or where the ribs are. And that will get that also another lymphatic watershed there. And so for each of these places, I recommend using the castor oil pack with an electric heating pad for 2 hours. And so you would do 2 hours on one location for one day, 2 hours on the same location the next day, take a day off, and then choose a new location. I work top down because you want everything drains here, and so you really want to make sure that this is open before you start moving down further. Be sure and take your day off. If you're kind of sick, don't do it. Take another day off, because that means that you've exceeded your metabolic capacity, that you're not able to detox everything that you've stirred up, and so it needs to be slowed down. Sometimes it means taking off a day or two. Sometimes it means you can't tolerate the 2 hours and that you need to go for a shorter period of time. And so feel free to shorten it up, to take more days off, to do it less intensively, um, in accordance with what your response is. And so usually each area will take probably like 4 to 8 hours, dependent on the amount of adhesions and congestion. But it's unlikely that an area would clear with less than 4 hours of castor oil packs, in my experience, with someone who's chronic. Um, you don't have to start these before your therapy, but it could be helpful. It will definitely be something that I'll probably be recommending during your therapy. So it's up to you. A lot of people come with venous congestion, and so the venous system is a system that needs to be rehabbed, because the veins themselves become distended and the valves lose some competency. And so sometimes they can get all of that competency back. Sometimes it's something that just needs to be kind of supported and revisited for life, and we use herbs for that. And so if you have chronic varicosities, if you have chronic vascular congestion, then you probably will most likely need venous support. And the venous support that I like is called Vessel Forte by Designs for Health. I like this because it not only addresses the venous system, but also the lymphatic system. And again, you can get that through my website at Fullscript for a 10% discount. And then we talked before about the kidney and lymphatic detox systems. Some people are going to need liver detox also. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. That's a system that's also going to be working through the manual therapy, is going to be challenged. And the medicine that I like for that is called Detoxification Factors by Integrative Health. And you can get that through Fullscript for a 10% discount. That supports phase 1 and phase 2 biohepatic transformation. And if you don't want to take a pill, you can also do one of the detox teas through traditional medicines, or yogi teas, something like that. Those are a real gentle type of liver support. And so if you don't want to dive in whole hog, you could just do, like maybe 2 to 4 cups of tea a day for liver support. If you're coming for digestive problems, something that has not been diagnosed, something that could be possibly inflammatory in nature, I recommend going on the Whole30 for a month before you come. The Whole30 is a great diet. It cuts out lots of common inflammatory foods and foods that people tend to be sensitive to in our culture. I like it because it's it has a great online community. The instructions are written out. It's easy to follow. There's lots of recipes online. It's only 30 days. People often will see a big response within 30 days. The inflammation will go down dramatically with the Whole30. And then what we do after that is to add back in one food at a time so that we can see what the body tolerates and what it doesn't tolerate. So it's kind of like a reverse eliminate. It's like a elimination diet and then a reintroduction diet, so that it's giving us a therapeutic advantage, and then it's giving us a diagnostic benefits without paying several $100s to find out what foods you're sensitive to. It'll give us a pretty good idea of what you need to continue cutting out of your diet while we heal the leaky gut and whatever other kind of infectious agent or parasite or whatever else is going on in the gut. So the Whole30 is a good way um, to address uh, gut problems before you come for your healing vacation. A manual thing that you can do at home for lymphatic drainage is a shower hydrotherapy, and I'll have a video that's attached to this so you can see how that goes. You can understand it a little bit better. But basically, the idea is that it's hot and cold therapy. So, a mini lymphatic drainage is just after your shower, you just run cold over your body until your head clears and you feel light and bright and happy. Make sure you get into your armpits and on your head, your back, and your chest. That's the most important. A more deep lymphatic drainage contrast bath or contrast shower is 30 seconds cold, 60 seconds hot, 30 seconds cold. This needs to be extreme, and so you can watch the other video to figure out if that's right for you or not, to do in advance of coming to your healing vacation. The other thing that's really important to work on, and that we'll go over in care, is how to do proper physiologic breathing. Proper physiologic breathing is super important because it's the breath that pumps the lymphatic system when you're not exercising. And so we need to have that. These are the ribs. They need to be separating with each breath in and closing with each breath out. There needs to be 2 inches of expansion in the rib cage with every breath, with no elevation of the rib cage, because the core muscles, the transversus abdominis, are holding down the bottom of the rib cage so that we're not getting any floating up of the rib cage. And we're doing the canister breathing. With the canister breathing, what's happening is that the transverse planes, the horizontal planes above and below the lungs, are being pushed apart. So the respiratory diaphragm and pelvic diaphragm go down, the thoracic outlet, the throat, and the sphenoid tentorium diaphragms will go up. And so that needs to happen in order to maintain mobility of the lymphatic system. And so that's something that most people are challenged to learn because it's really different than the breathing that they thought they were doing right their whole life, which is the belly breathing. Which is when you just like let go of the gut, let it pooch out, and don't have any movement of the rib cage, which doesn't make any sense if you think about it. So the best way that I know, the easiest way that I know to get people to start doing this physiologic breathing pattern is using the resistance breathing pipe. That pipe will automatically turn on the muscles of respiration, and it will create the canister so that you can begin to get that 2 inches of increased circumference with every breath. You can have that abdominal wall firing properly, so you don't have the elevation of the rib cage with every breath, and you actually get the pumping of the transverse planes with every single breath. And that's absolutely essential for any kind of pelvic problem. We need to have those transverse planes moving properly with every single breath. Otherwise, there's no point. Everything is just going to go back to the way it was because you haven't set up the body's way that it self-regulates, which is through the breath. And so this is super important. I'm putting a video in here of how to do it with recommendation of which pipe I like. You can get whatever you want, but I like the pipes that have resisted in and out breath. And I also encourage people to do the physiologic breath pattern, which is 3 seconds in, 7 seconds out, 6 times a minute. Do not follow the app. That is not a physiologic pattern of breath. I don't know why. There's lots of different therapeutic breathing patterns, and what I'm trying to teach is the physiologic breathing pattern. 3 seconds in, 7 seconds out, 6 times a minute. That gives us proper autonomic tone. 3 seconds in is sympathetic, 7 seconds out is parasympathetic. We need to live in parasympathetic dominance, and the breath is what regulates that. And so that's why this is super awesome. And there's another video on it, and then links to where to get the pipe. And then the other thing that's really nice to begin bringing consciousness to in advance is muscle activation. And so the basic thing I'm talking about is when you breathe, air takes up room. So there is increased volume. So that's what we were talking about. The rib cage expands, the respiratory diaphragm goes down and displaces the abdominal organs. So there's distension, slight distension of the abdomen, and there's lowering of the pelvic floor, another transverse plane. When you breathe out, that all reverses. There's less volume, air is volume, volume goes out, so the diaphragms come up, the respiratory pelvic floor diaphragm come up, and the organs are no longer displaced. So they come up, so there's narrowing of the abdominal girth, right? So now what I want you to think about is what happens when you talk, when you laugh, when you cough, when you sneeze, when you lift, when you do some kind of exertion. Air goes out. When air goes out, what should happen? The belly should go in. Why? Because there's less volume in your body. The belly goes in when air goes out. The pelvic floor and the respiratory diaphragm go up. And so I want you to start noticing when I laugh, ha! What happens? Do I push down into my pelvic bowl and my pelvic floor lowers? Does my belly go out? Now, this is the most common thing. That's typically what people do. People are typically not activating the muscles properly. They don't have an awareness of what their body is doing with those movement patterns. And so what I'm saying is, in advance, put this notion in your mind. Air has volume. Air is going to displace structure. It displaces the rib cage. It displaces the respiratory diaphragm. It displaces the pelvic diaphragm. It displaces the abdominal organs. When air goes out, there's less volume in my body. So the diaphragms, the pelvic floor, and the respiratory diaphragms go up. So that means when I cough, my pelvic floor diaphragm should go up because there's less volume, and I'm getting rid of the volume, so reflexively it should go up. When I cough, when I sneeze, when I talk loudly, when I laugh, air goes out. There's less volume. My belly should come in. My belly should come in because the organs are no longer displaced, because the diaphragms are coming up, because the air is going out and the ribs are coming in. So you just have to kind of like think through the mechanics of it and then start noticing. And when you notice, oh, I felt my diaphragm go down when I laughed. Oh, that's not right. Next time, I'm going to grab it, and I'm going to lift it. And so it has to start in the brain. And maybe you'll be like, where is it? I can't feel that. What's going on? And so that's why it's nice to have the resisted breathing, because with the resisted breathing, it's going to turn on your diaphragms. You're going to be like, what? I can feel my respiratory diaphragm, my pelvic floor diaphragm activating when I breathe in and when I breathe out. So it's super awesome for this. And then just understanding the mechanics and catching yourself, bringing consciousness to your own body. What does that mean? It means slowing down. You have to slow down to be able to notice, oh, this is what I do when I cough. Oh, I'm anticipating a sneeze, so I'm going to activate my core muscles. I'm going to activate my pelvic floor. I'm going to prepare for that because I know air is going to come out. And as you strengthen, as right relationship and right strength comes in, you won't need to prepare. Because why? Because these are postural muscles. These are muscles that do not turn off. These are muscles that are always on. You don't need to grab them. You don't need to tell them to fire. They are there. And they're only confused or asleep because they haven't been used properly. And this whole way that we're going to deal with it is help wake them up so they can remember, who am I? Why am I here? What am I meant to do? And then they'll be like, I got this. I know how to do this. This is what I'm designed to do. Don't worry about it. So you can start on all this stuff before you come in for your healing vacation or begin your therapy sessions with me. And don't worry about it if you don't want to do any of this stuff. That's totally fine. We're gonna go over all of it together anyways. But I just wanted to kind of get you heads up so you can know what to expect. And if you want to get started early, there you go.